All right. So let's go ahead and jump in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. I am so excited that you're here. If you are joining us again for the second time around, even better. So glad you guys came back. In case you're wondering, this is what we're talking about today, the Outward Mindset book. And before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. So first, we heard you. Thank you guys so much for your feedback. Really, really helpful. So we wanted to touch base on a couple of the technical items before we jump in. So if you are having any kind of issues hearing or seeing or any of those types of things, light mode may be for you. A couple of caveats with light mode. It does prohibit you from being able to raise your hand and come on stage. And we have heard that there are some challenges joining breakout rooms. But, certainly we can work through that. Don't worry, hang out here with me. We'll do kind of an impromptu breakout session. Also, when you are entering a breakout room, so let me go down here and show you some magic. When you are, just kidding. Let me go further. When you're joining a breakout room, so what you're going to do is up in that top line, you're going to see where it says breakout rooms. That's what you're going to select. From there, it's going to take you to a page that looks much like this one. And what you're going to want to do is click one of the plus signs. Now, because you guys are so helpful with your feedback, we are doing much smaller breakouts this time around. So it is going to be 6 people. And because of that, we have 6 people per breakout room. And because of that, we have a lot of breakout rooms. So I recommend scrolling down so that way you can see if there are some breakout rooms further down and allow you to join. As a note, there are not any Arbinger facilitators in these breakout rooms. You guys have awesome ideas. And so because of that, we want you to get in there and just jump in and have those conversations amongst yourselves. Hopefully the smaller groups really make it easier for that to happen. But certainly if you have any issues, don't hesitate to use the chat. That's where a lot of you guys are right now. Let me know where you're joining from. So excited to see all of that. And then also if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A tab, which is in that far right of that same panel where you guys are chatting right now. If you have joined us for this one, yay, we're glad you're here. And because of that, you're going to be automatically registered for all of our following book club dates. So don't stress. You don't need to re-register every time. You'll automatically get the invite to come join us. Certainly, if you can't make one, we'll miss you, sad. But certainly, don't worry about it because we've got the recording. You can catch up and then you can join us later. And as we talked about before, this is what we're doing for the Outward Mindset, but certainly we're talking about doing it for our newest edition of Leadership and Self-Deception, which will launch later this month. And so we would love to see you for all of that. So with that, let's go ahead and first I want to launch a poll because we want to know how many of you guys are using VPNs. We have had a lot of kind of feedback and insights. And so we would love to know, are you using a VPN? Just because that helps inform us from a technology platform standpoint in terms of any kind of hiccups that we might run into down the road. So if you have the ability to toggle that off, great. Totally understand that some companies and some organizations are not able to do that. But if you could just let us know in the chat, that would be, not in the chat, try again, Victoria. And the poll, if you could let us know, that would be great. So for those of you who don't know me or this is your first time joining us, my name is Victoria Trammel. I am a senior consultant here at the Arbinger Institute, and I am your host for today's Arbinger Book Club, affectionately called the ABC Fam in my household, but that's because we like acronyms and all of those things. So with that, let's dive right in. We are talking about chapters 3, 4, and 5 today, which if you guys were able to join us for the first section, it was something where we were talking about kind of just things differently, right? It was different. Using an outward mindset is sometimes considered like, unexpected or illogical were some of the words that were thrown out in the book. And we talked a little bit about kind of what that was like and how that felt, certainly in a management role as well as in an individual contributor role. From there, we kind of had the opportunity to dig deep into some additional questions. But what I love about chapters 3, 4, and 5 is we really start to get into what is mindset and what is the impact of it? What's the goal of it? What are the things that we can get out of it? And so with that, I want to jump right into our first breakout group. And so what we're going to do don't go yet. Stay, don't go. Before we jump in there, what I would love is two things. One, I want you to get to know your breakout group people a little bit. So what I want you to share is your favorite meal that you've had in the last 2 weeks. Your favorite meal and why. So for example, mine, I don't know if it counts as a meal, but it was s'mores. One, because I have a slight obsession with all things chocolate. And two, I like the smell of a fireplace, and I like, kind of setting the marshmallow on fire. Don't come at me if you don't like burned marshmallows. I love me a burned marshmallow, but just that kind of whole atmosphere with the magic of the toasty goodness. Anyway, that was my favorite meal in the last 2 weeks. So share your favorite meal. And then the question that I would love for you guys to do, hold on. Oh, I just lost it. So talking about the two stories, we're going to work our way backwards. So talking about the two stories at the end of chapter 5, where we talked about Ms. Tam and we talked about William. I just want you guys to talk through what stood out to you about those stories. Right? What in general about the stories of the elderly Vietnamese woman who was in a healthcare facility and this gentleman who was, I think it was 18th century England on the farm, what jumped out to you about those things? So what we're going to do is we're going to do 13 minutes because I'm here to make things challenging for our friends helping me facilitate this. We're going to do 13 minutes. Go ahead and jump into a breakout room by going up at that top. And we're going to go in there and jump in, join any of those breakout sessions. What was your favorite meal? And then what stood out to you about Ms. Tam's story or William's story? And just talk through that for a little bit. All right, 13 minutes. We'll send you a ticker tape along the top saying, come on back, and we'll see you soon. If anybody's having any challenges joining a breakout room, don't stress because we'll hang here and we'll do one on our own. Is everybody able to join? Is anybody here with me still in the main room? Just throw it in the chat. Hi, Carol. Are you in light mode, Carol? Because if you are, then we can talk about it here. But if you're not, I can bring you on stage maybe. All right, anybody else here? Oh, you're in light mode. Okay, perfect. So if you just want to throw your ideas in the chat, is there anything that stuck out to you about Ms. Tam's story or William's story? Anything that you just kind of went, wow, that was interesting. That was crazy. Or, man, that really made me think. It's something where every time I read this book, I think their stories, like, oh man, it always hits me so hard. Where do you get out of light mode? That is a great question. I'm going to throw it to our backstage crew to see if maybe they can help us out with that. Yeah, I think you can toggle it off. If I remember correctly, there's something, if you're on a phone, it should be at the bottom of the screen. If you're on a desktop, it should be the same thing. So if you toggled it on, you should be able to toggle it off. Okay. Is anybody else in here in the main stage with me, or is everybody in a breakout room? Is it just me and Carol hanging out? Yeah, absolutely. Contrary, for sure. Say more on that, or type more on that. Let's see. Is it possible for Carol to come off? Can we give it the old college try? I'm trying to see if we can get you on stage in spite of.
Oh, yes. You did.
Hi, Carol.
How did you do that? Because I can't. I can't figure out how to do it. It doesn't say, I don't see anywhere where it says breakout rooms.
So along the top of your screen, it should say, you should see the Arbinger logo in the corner.
Gosh, I see it now. Anyway.
Totally, listen, we got a breakout group of 2. Don't you worry. If anybody else is here, throw it in the chat because you can join. Let's say, do we have a third? Oh, the suspense is killing me. Carmen.
Yes.
Hi. Okay. So, Ms. Tam.
So I don't have any of that functionality, I don't think.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. We got our breakout group of 3. Okay, so Ms. Tam's story and William's story. What jumped out at you?
Well, it's our first human reaction to think the other person is the problem, and to always think what is convenient to me, what I want to have happen, and it's usually convenience, and that's the inward mindset. And so the way I think of it is, I heard someone say once, when we're in the inward mindset, we're down in our head, lower part of our brain, and if we engage our heart, and I actually had a neuroscience class that said this, it was amazing. When we engage our heart and we start looking at the other person as a person and with compassion, then it actually stops, it uploads chemicals to open up our frontal cortex, neural cortex. And we get endorphins when we start to think in a compassionate way. And I thought, this is the outward mindset. And the neuroscience class was confirming that the outward mindset works, but it's not our first tendency. Our first tendency is to think, with our animalistic brain. You do what's best for me rather than what's best for you. And if we just get our heart involved and look at that person as a person, then and stand back a minute, then we literally do get ideas that come in our head.
Yeah.
And they've actually,
amazing, isn't it? I mean, because I know for me, far more often I am the one that the question that the nurse asks about what it might be like for her, that is not a natural response for me. Yeah. It's not something that automatically I'm like, man, it must be really tough. No, I and I would love to say oh yeah, no, I always have those kind of it's not a natural response. I have to condition myself to think this way, right? To just take a moment. For me, it's pausing because my brain runs at 1,000,000 miles a second, but pausing, right? No, I think that's a great insight, Carol. Carmen, do you have anything you want to add or anything different that you
I think it's along the same lines, but it's the idea of how do we step into the shoes of the other person?
I mean, I feel like that's something that our parents would tell us, well, walk a mile in their shoes, right? But sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying we don't typically do it unless we intentionally pause.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's gotten worse because of sort of the speed of everything nowadays. It's kind of like being on the hamster wheel, and we're worried about the past, we're worried about the future, we're not really operating in the present moment.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I think, I can't speak for all cultures, but I know certainly in what we'll call the DC rat race, which is where I usually live, we thrive on being busy all the time. It's like a status symbol, right? It's a badge of honor that, we're too busy that we can't sleep, eat, breathe, drink water enough, all of those things. But, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's an easy thing for us to hide behind, right? I mean, hide behind being busy, not having enough time, having competing priorities, really convenient excuses when I find myself not caring what the other person's going through, like when they cut me off at traffic. Other thoughts?
Well, the inward mindset is so human, and it's our first tendency that we don't recognize that we're being inward. We don't recognize that we're being self-focused until we listen to all these stories and analyze them and go, oh my gosh, I did that. I'm doing it. You know, it's so easy to do. So it takes effort to be outward, but it's so rewarding when you do it. It changes your whole life, it gives you peace. It's amazing.
One of those I kind of equate to a habit, right? So, initially it might feel like there's some resistance, but I don't know, over time I've found that it's one of those I at least can recognize it faster. It's not that I don't have an inward mindset. But it's one of those I have the ability to recognize it a little bit faster. What did you
Yeah.
guys think about William's story with his son and the the beating of the animals, which it was a little hard for me to read.
That was amazing.
Right?
Incredible.
Say more.
Well, that anyone could literally change on, I think Chip Hughes says, the turn of a dime. Is that what he said?
Mm.
If you can really change completely just by understanding inward and outward mindset, I would say that's rare, I think, because unless I'm reading the material every day, I tend to go back into being inward. And I have to always be reminding myself, I need to be outward. I need to think of these other people, look at my impact on them, and look at what it's like to be in their shoes. That's just not, I don't think, a natural tendency that we human beings have. And it takes I've been studying this for years, and I still go too many times inward. And I think what happens is the things that are the most important to us, that's when we get triggered the most. And in other things where I'm not that, it's not that important to me, well, it doesn't hit my value system as much, then I find that I have developed the habit of being more outward than before. But still it creeps in to be inward. So it's like a constant vigilance for me. You think
You're not wrong, that's for sure. But I mean, it's one of those, for me, the way that I've had to conceptualize it is, we talk about impact and we talk about the impact on others, and that was fine. But the moment that it really clicked for me, it was, what is it costing me?
Yeah.
Like, that was something different than the way I had thought about it previously. Because it was like, impact is negative, impact isn't great, impact, But like, what is it costing me when I live in this inward mindset, right? Like, what was it costing William, or what was it costing those healthcare professionals to exist like that? Like that to me is, I think, where it lands really heavy, especially on my heart, like when I think about it that way. Susan, so glad to see you on the
Hi.
stage.
Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Oh, excellent. Sorry, I can't get my video to work, but I promise next time.
It's all good.
I
Lovely initials.
love
Thank
the outward mindset. I read it probably about 3 years ago,
Hmm.
and it's required at our company, Bricadia, and I had never thought about that until we've gone through extensive Arbinger training. And so it's really interesting because it impacts your professional as well as your personal life, because
Right.
that we call it turning a chair. So if you're
Mhm.
kind of stuck in your little world, then you kind of rephrase it and think, I'm going to turn my chair and put myself in that other person's or other situation and kind of figure it out from there. And it's helped in so many facets of my life. And that's all I wanted to say.
No, that's
amazing.
great. Was there anything that stuck out for you from Miss Tam or William's story that you wanted to share?
Victoria, I must apologize because I just signed up for this and I read it like
no
3
worries.
or 4 years ago, and I do not remember. So I'm promising
You don't remember every detail from a book you read 3 or 4 years ago? I'm shocked, Susan.
But
I can't
so
remember what
I
I
do
had for
apologize,
breakfast,
but
so
I
listen.
didn't want. I just wanted to say how much it's that Arbinger outward mindset has really helped, and I will be able to talk more next time.
I love that. No, I'm so glad you came on stage. Thank you.
Thank
Carmen,
you.
other thoughts from you?
Yeah, there were two things. One, I think it was a shock to the system for for him. And it was like putting the mirror up and actually seeing his own behavior in his son. So I thought that it's just a different way of really kind of hitting the values.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I mean, when you talk about a shock to the system, right? I mean, I feel like for it to be a catalyst for that big of a shift that quickly, it would have to be a shock to the system. But I love what you're saying about it's a shock to his values, right? Like that's ultimately what kind of provided enough of a jolt for him to be like, whoa, this is not what I want. Man, that's a great point. I love that. Okay, let's see. Is everybody coming back to the stage? Leaving your breakout groups. Hopefully, just throw in the chat if you're back. And thank you, Carol, Carmen, and Susan. You guys were great. Thank you so much for sharing. That was awesome. All right, so back. All right, we got Heather, we got Michelle. Great.
Is there a way that I'm supposed to mute myself now?
We'll pull you off stage. Don't worry about it, Carol. Not to worry.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Smita, Jace, everybody's coming on back. Group 3 is back. All right. I feel like there's some pride coming for the groups. All right. We got group 3 repping, group 1. Awesome. We'll give folks another minute or two. Hopefully you guys were able to dig in. I love these two stories. Like, I think that they're different, but yet obviously the underlying theme of mindset and mindset shift is there, which I just think is such a powerful story. So does anybody want to come on stage and share what their group talked about? If you do, go ahead and click raise hand, which should be at the bottom of your screen. And with that, hold on, I can show you where it is. Maybe. Nope. Try again, Victoria. Nope. Try again, Victoria. There we go. Bottom right. If you are interested in coming on stage to share what it is that you talked about in your group. If there's anybody out there, I would love to have you come join and just share a little bit. Doesn't have to be long. Just a couple minutes, a couple sentences. I won't even hold you to minutes. Don't be shy. Hey, Darren.
Whoa, that was fast.
Careful what you wish for, Darren. We're going to bring you on real quick.
All right. It's just a warning, y'all. You hit that button and you're on stage. Wow. All right, then. Raise hand and be on stage. Okay.
So what did you guys talk about? Yeah.
So we talked about how we can sometimes focusing so much on being outward or being a good leader in that quest in itself, we've already missed the mark in the sense that, you know what I'm saying?
Say more on it though.
So, yeah. So like it's funny because when you leave leadership training, and I like to share this as a leadership instructor at times, say, yeah, well, don't you all feel like when you're going to leave here, I'm going to be a great leader and I'm going to listen to people and I'm going to do this. And it's like, guys, what are you hearing me say? What's the word you commonly hear? You hear I, right? Mm-hmm. So already I'm focused inward. And we just talked about how there was an example. I think it was Mitch Warner, one of the founders of Arbinger, talked about how he went back to a facility where it was a nursing care facility and how he spoke to his previous supervisors and how when they are helping somebody, they're not thinking about how can I be a good leader? How can I do this? They're completely immersed in that individual and they are listening to their specific needs because it's going to be different for everybody, right? And we have to listen. And I do think it's hilarious, the irony of trying to be an active listener while you're talking to somebody.
Right.
I'm listening to myself, right? It's just kind of funny, right? So, yeah. But,
okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Darren. That's awesome. Yeah, I think, similar, we in our kind of on stage small breakout, we had a similar kind of, that it's not necessarily natural or, the first instinct to be thinking of others. It is kind of that self-focus, right? And that's what we talk about in a lot of this, especially as we start to dig into these chapters. But thank you, Darren. I appreciate that. Anybody else who wants to come share what their group talked about? I think something that was interesting that popped up in ours while we're waiting to see if anybody else, any other brave souls. What we talked about in our group was that a lot of times we can hide behind busyness or competing priorities or lack of time as a reason to kind of keep us from seeing more, right? I admitted that, it is not a natural thing for me to go, I wonder what it's like to live in that other person's shoes right now. It's not my first instinct. It's something that, I've gotten better with over time, but it's not something where it's like the first thing that I go with. But, for me, and I was sharing, especially in the DC metro area where we live, busyness is a badge of honor. It's something that we are proud of if we are too busy to sleep or eat or drink properly. And so with that, it's very easy for us to be like, I don't have time. I don't have time to figure out what's going on with this person. They're just a problem. And then the lovely cycle of inwardness perpetuates. All right. Anybody else that we have that would like to come on stage? Oh, excellent. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, everyone. I forgot the name of the gentleman that was before me, and the inward and the outward, right? So the two mindsets of this chapter, it talks about so much on, we are so wrapped up in our own world, right? So internally, and it goes hand in hand on developing the self-awareness. And as right there, the premise of the chapter is not seeing people as an object, right? So that seeing people as a human being. And then that specific example, I believe one of the ladies that was with me on the room, the example of somebody not speaking the same language, it is having that empathy, being understanding and not jumping into conclusion, because sometimes when we have language barrier and cultural barriers, that also gives room for misunderstandings. And I speak that because English is not my first language, and even though I have been living in the US for 20 years, I have adapted to the culture. But when you are interacting with someone that is not from your same cultural background or upbringing, it gives room for misunderstanding when you don't see that person, as a human being. And then you see that person as another person that grew up in the same, how can I explain that? Sometimes we jump into conclusions and we take for granted that everybody is going to operate in the same way that you operate.
Why do you think we do that?
Because we are so in our own world that we don't get to see everybody else. So it goes back to, it's kind of like this cycle that we are so used to in our mind. When you wake up in the morning, what is the first thing that you're thinking about? Yourself. And what the things that you need to get done. And the things that, either you need to go to a meeting, either you need to get ready for a Zoom call, whatever it might be. You don't think about somebody else. You don't have that self-awareness. And it goes back to one of the things that this book makes you reflect, the outward mindset. It's not about you. It is about how the impact that you have on others as you carry on with your day-to-day activities.
Yeah, impact, I think, is absolutely massive. And one of the things that we talked about in our group is, for me, I really had a tough time understanding, like, I know having a negative impact on others is bad, right? Like, that was something that I've known forever. But it didn't really hit home for me until I started asking, what's the cost of me being focused on me, right? Because impact is like, okay, yeah, so like they were negatively impacted, okay, fine. But if I talk about it in terms of cost, like, what is it costing me? Is it costing me my relationship with my children? Is it costing me potential job opportunities and promotions? Is it costing me new business coming in the door? Like, what is it costing me? That was the first time I think my brain finally went, ooh, yeah, this might be a problem. It might be one that I'm bigger than I'm willing to admit. Because I would always would have characterized myself as relatively self-aware, and I just didn't care. Right? I mean, it was like, yeah, I know I'm having a negative impact, and I got things to do, right? To your point, we all have objectives that we're trying to achieve. We all have things that we're trying to do. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Sonia. That was amazing. Great. Anybody else before we keep chugging along? Okay. So the other part that I want to go to before we go into our next breakout session, hold on, let me get my handy dandy book. So when we talk about, I'm on page 23. And so this is, leading up to this is where they're talking about, the idea that we can't be separate from others, that we are created in relation to one another, right? Whether it be a familial relationship, a business relationship, even just a stranger relationship, right? Somebody that you're encountering at the grocery store, at the gas station, or whatever that looks like. And so that our interactions are what ultimately color our experiences. And so one of the things that it talks about, it's on page 23. And it says the story of man-made boundaries and imagined separations that split mankind from the world, from each other, and finally even from oneself. And that was something like it stood out to me. I guess I could have read the whole sentence. Sorry, guys. This is where my brain gets excited. It's one of those things that like inescapably we're built for this idea of togetherness, right? Of relation and connection. But we erect these boundaries that separate us in such a spectacular way. You could look at the Olympics that just concluded. I don't know if anybody else is going through Olympics withdrawal like I am, but even that, right? Like we're creating these boundaries of nations to say it's us and it's them, right? Or it's, all of this kind of stuff. So what I want to do in the next breakout session, let me check my watch. Okay, so I want to do 15 minutes for this next breakout because I want to give you guys some time to dig in. Why do we create these boundaries, right? If we know that we are created for connection and we're created in relationship, right, at its kind of most fundamental core, why do we create these boundaries? Why do we construct these man-made boundaries? So with that, go ahead and jump into your breakout rooms. We're going to have 15 minutes. Breakout rooms, as a reminder, at the top in the banner, you'll see the Arbinger logo, stage agenda, and then breakout rooms. So click on that. Make sure you click a plus sign. And we have lots and lots of breakout rooms because we're doing smaller groups this time around. So please scroll if you need to find a new home. And you don't have to go back to the same group, but if you've got, frenzies, by all means, do that. And then we will see you back here in 15 minutes. And if you can't jump in, don't worry. I'll be here. We can hang out, chat about it. Okay? And off you go. 15 minutes. Is everybody flying free? Is anybody still here with me in the main room? Maybe. Nobody? Did everybody find a friend? Is anybody still here with me in the main stage? Hi, Olga. Are you able to raise your hand and come on stage? Yes, I'm going to say per that direction. You can raise your hand. If anybody else. Hi, Marissa. How are you?
I was just writing a quote and I was still here. And so I figured if Olga's still here, I'll stay here too.
Yeah, why not? Let's hang out. All right. So what do you think? Why do we create these barriers?
I think it's just part of how we are wired from, I don't know. We're almost raised that way. That's just society, isn't it? Like,
I don't know. What do you think?
We have these labels just because they're there.
I'm sure there's a whole thing of psychology that, the us, them, the feeling of belonging in the community and all of that. Right. Yeah, it was something that even like, as I was reading through this, I was struggling, like, why would we do this? Like, if we're created in such a way right? And everything that we talk about is because even like I think about when I introduce myself, right? I introduce myself with my title. If they're like, oh, tell me something about you, it's 100% relational, right? I'm talking to you about my family and how, that I'm a daughter and I'm a friend and I'm a wife and I'm a mother, and like these labels that establish me in relation to others, right? So I was thinking about that. I was like, why do we do that?
I think they make it, I think we feel that they make us safe to stay with people like us.
What do you mean? Yeah.
Like and also to find people who have gone through similar things as us. So sometimes the labels, I'm just coming from a place where I recently got a nasty diagnosis. And I'm different from most people that are in this group in the fact that I'm just a mom looking to improve my family versus a leader anywhere else. And so trying to look outside when you have something like that that's pulling you in, but then look outside for somebody who's like you, because there's so many people who don't understand unless I can go find somebody who has kind of been in my same boat.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So first of all, I'm going to push back on your just a mom comment, because that's superhuman feats right there. So
I know.
Please don't. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. First of all, 2, this is awesome. I'm excited for you and I'm inspired by you. And I would love to keep in touch after, because I want to hear how this all goes. But
I would love that, because I need more talking through these books. I listened to this one once, but I started with Peace, Anatomy of Peace.
That one's great, especially in a family context.
Right. But I need to get them to listen. But the way it's told, my husband is just struggling to even connect.
Yeah.
And I'm just borrowing them on my library app. So I don't always have access to the exact one that I want.
Fair.
But I love the idea and just need to talk through some things and connect it. I think it's the first thing that I've heard that really helps me put my husband's mindset and mine kind of on the same page, and help. I think we could really talk through things. We have a tendency to be polar opposites, where, and I'm actually more typical male and he's more typical female. And a lot of those, again, we put those there to help us understand and explain each other.
Sure.
But,
I think
to have those labels.
I think you're hitting on some great points, right? Like we look simultaneously for similarities, right, to provide that feeling of comfort, but then at the same time we identify differences to help explain things that aren't the same to us, right? It's like my husband, I love my husband. My husband and I couldn't be more different. So I am an external processor. I'm going to talk to you about all my emotions and everything that I'm thinking about and all of the things. My husband's like, I need 30 minutes to figure out where my head is on this, and then I'll talk to you. Meanwhile, so polar opposites. And for the longest time, it caused conflict, because I was like, I don't understand why you can't just talk through this with me right now. But it's interesting why we do those things. But I love your point. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm excited. But yes, I would love to continue to connect. So
it sounds like we have a couple other people that are just hanging out.
I know.
Come on, Kathy, and chat with us too.
Just a superhero. Absolutely. I like it. Okay, Scott, are you good? Oh, Scott. There's Scott. Thank you so much, Marissa. I appreciate you sharing. Scott,
hey,
what you got?
I just to Marissa's challenges, the one thing to be aware of is that you can only work on yourself. You can't make your husband do what you need to do. And I think that's one of the challenges I've always had with outward mindset is, I can see a lot of other things that other people can do that would help them to be outward. And I need to really rein myself in and make sure that I focus on myself, because that's who I can control. That's where I have influence, and obviously you have influence on your husband, but the biggest influence will be when you work on yourself, and when regardless of whether you're in a family situation or a work situation, you have to really work to against that desire to change somebody else, and just focus on the things that you really have control over.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that's probably most infuriating and most freeing simultaneously about this work, right? Like you can only change yourself, but you have 100% control over changing yourself. So it's like, it's that beautiful duality of the nature of this and of mindset. Scott, do you have anything you want to share? Kind of why do we erect these man-made boundaries? Do you have any thoughts on that you want to share?
I think a lot of it comes to comfort and fear. We fear the unknown. We're comfort. A lot of times, even if we're in a situation that's not great, we're comfortable with that, and we're concerned that something different might be worse, and so I think a lot of times it just comes down to we're creatures of habit, and so what we're used to is what we stick with, even if it's not great.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something comfortable, right? There's familiarity. It's like, your
Yep.
favorite pair of sweatpants. It's just something that, you gravitate towards, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for sharing, Scott. I appreciate that. Olga, no option to raise. You might be in light mode, Olga. That might be what's going on.
She says she's on a phone too.
Yeah, I was going to say there might be something in there. Marissa, Scott, anything else that you guys want to share? Any other thoughts?
This other thing that came to mind, because I'm currently listening to the leadership one and self-deception. Mm-hmm. And so getting out of the box, and the one thing, focusing on yourself doesn't get you out of the box either. Yeah. And so really focusing on the other person, like the gentleman said at the end of, in between the two breakout sessions, like, being a good leader, you already missed the key. So just focusing on what you can do for others is huge.
The one like nuance that I want to highlight at that, because I, as a mom, fall into this trap where I then put other people before me. And really, when we're talking about this, it's not that other people matter more than I do. It's that they matter as much as I do, which means that I still matter, right? There's inherently that aspect there. And a lot of times that's where I lose sight of it, right? I become so focused on, well, I need to make sure I'm doing what they need, that I lose the other half of that equation, that it's not just that they matter, it's they matter like I matter, meaning that we equally have a point and a role in our existence, and whatever that needs to look like, right? And so that's something where I just wanted to hit on that nuance. It's not necessarily only focusing on other people, but it's taking into account our impact, right? And so, for me at home, the way that shows up is, am I momming in a way that it's helping my kids kind of grow in the way that we hope as a family? It's not that I'm doing whatever it is that they need, because sometimes it's going to be some tough love, right? What they need in this moment is going to be some tough love. And I saw the same thing when I had employees reporting to me. There are times where I can't give you that promotion, right? It's some of those tough love moments, because you matter like I matter. Your career development or your personal development matters to me just as much as my own. And so because of that, I can't compromise myself in order to achieve your objectives, but your objectives matter to me too. Does that make sense?
It does. It's a really hard balance to hit, for sure. I'm loving what Kathy's trying to say here too, listening and reading all at the same time.
Queen of multitasking, yes. Seeing the box and actively understanding and choosing the path actively is important. I love, Kathy, what you're saying there, actively, like that I think is absolutely critical, because that is really kind of a lot of what we're talking about, right? Because we talked previously about how our natural tendency, or our passive tendency, we might say, is to be self-focused. So that active component. It takes some intentionality, right? I mean, it's not just like, oh, I stumbled out of the box and it was a great Tuesday. Like, if only it were that simple. But yeah, reaction instead of response. Yeah. Go ahead,
Victoria,
Scott.
I think that for me the key is to, if I have to give tough love, I have to do it not because the person is an obstacle, but because I'm trying to help them. And you know, that's a really easy trap to fall into. You know, I when I first I read Outward Mindset about 5 years ago, and I had a leader under who reported to me who was really having some problems in their office, and I asked them to read it, and you know, hoping they would apply it to some of the problems they had. And they came back to me and they said, "Oh, this is perfect. These people underneath me, they just don't have an outward mindset." And no, wait, you missed my point.
Use it as a diagnostic tool, I see.
Yeah. He still saw them as obstacles, and so
Right.
you know, it didn't work out the way I had hoped. So,
but I mean, I think that goes to your point earlier of comfort, right? It's comfortable to talk about others' shortcomings rather than taking a moment to reflect on your own. I love that. No, great. Thank you so much. How much longer do we have on our breakouts? I lost track of time. 1 minute. Okay, lovely. Is there anybody else out there who in the 1 minute? Kathy, I'm loving your contributions. Do you want to come on stage? Maybe. I don't know if you can. If you can't, totally fine. But you're good. Okay, no worries. I'm loving what you guys are sharing in the chat. Like, this is such, yeah, I think, you know, a lot of times when we talk about inwardness and outwardness, it's really easy to get down on ourselves. Like, I know when I read leadership and self-deception the first time, the thing I walked away with was like, wow, I'm a massive jerk. And so it became really kind of, I don't know, it was a tough journey because a lot of it was like, every time I would go inward, I'm like, man, and I would just really get down on myself. But I loved what you were talking about. It's like just acknowledging the box, right? Going, yep, I'm inward. Yep, that's a problem. And it's one of those, I don't know that I might push back a little bit and not say necessarily that it's okay to be there, but it's one of those where it's okay to go, yeah, I'm here and now I can move forward, right? Like, it's okay to understand, like, I'm inward and I'm human and that's going to happen. But it's one of those, you know, it gave me an opportunity to then go, yeah, okay, I'm here. And what do I do now to move forward? Because it was really hard for me. It was something that I really just continued to beat myself up about, if I'm being honest. Okay, time's up. Hopefully people are coming on back. If you're back, go ahead and throw it in the chat that you're here, that you're back, or pick your favorite song lyric to address that you're back, whatever that looks like. I don't know if there's any, well, I have a whole plethora of song lyrics running through my head. It's one of those things. I don't know if anybody else kind of feels like they live in their own personal musical. It's kind of where I go sometimes. Okay, excellent. We've got some folks coming back. While we're waiting for others, if of anybody who's back, does anybody want to come on stage and share what their group talk about? Back in the saddle. Come on, Samantha. That's what I'm talking about. Does anybody want to come on stage and share what their group talked about? Yeah. Hi, Sonia. Welcome back.
I'm back, and I promised the team. So, as a matter of fact, I think that Samantha was on mine. So, one of the questions was of why do we put barriers, right? So, among ourselves, right? So, Jonathan had very good comments, and Greg, as well as Amy and Susan. And the first one, it is more for protection, right? So, because many times we put these boundaries either for protecting against conflict, fear, or being hurt. The other, it is to exert some level of control, right? So because it is by putting those boundaries. The other was from pride, right? So, but not the pride, that the good pride, more like the kind of wrong pride. So prejudice, it would be along those lines. And the other was more from the structures that either society, the environment, or companies put around things, right? So that's how we need to behave. Those are the boundaries that that you need to follow the norm, right? So follow what everybody else is doing. And for those that were in my team, in my breakout room, please either type or chime in there. And the last one was also power, right? So in order to exert power on somebody else's, right? So especially in the corporate setting or companies, right? So
Why do you think we need that power?
and that one, Susan, if correct me on this one, right? It is more to either to influence people or influence things to go on your way, either to gain things. At least that's how I understood or interpreted when I believe was Susan that was sharing that. And it's more self-serving aspect.
Yeah.
That's the wrong kind of power, right? So when you're trying to manipulate others and then you put those boundaries.
Yeah.
So that's what I had.
I love that. That's great. Thank you. No, because that kind of resonates a little bit with what our group talked about. That was really around the ideas of like we put these boundaries in place for kind of one of two reasons. One, it provides a sense of comfort, right? When we're identifying similarities in others and we're identifying some sameness, right? Whereas if we can draw that boundary between those that are like us and those that are not like us, or the others, or the it, them, kind of that sense. But also, Scott had shared a little bit about fear, and that sometimes fear plays a role in terms of drawing those boundaries because we're afraid of the unknown. Anybody else out there who wants to raise their hand and come on stage, share what their group talked about? You guys just can't wait me out because listen, I can be a very patient person. We got 7 minutes. I can wait. Frozen 2, Into the Unknown. Now you just song bombed me, Scott. Hi, Neil. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, Victoria. I came late to the party. I forgot.
Well, that's okay.
I actually got involved with something else. Anyway, our group had a really good discussion, and I think we came up with a few points. One, boundaries go up because of fear, safety, and protection, right? We're afraid of, it's not a safe space, or I'm not sure what these people might think, and that kind of thing. The other was power. That culturally, a lot of times at work, for example, we put up boundaries because that's what we feel like we have to do. Is if I'm a leader in an organization, I have to keep my distance from my charges, so to speak, and don't get to know them. They're the people I have to discipline them sometimes. I have to do these things, and I can't do that if they're my friends, so to speak. And so we put up these imaginary boundaries and not realizing that it's actually more damaging than the opposite.
And then that's a huge point. It's more damaging, right? And
yeah.
I feel like I see that all the time. Sorry, keep going. I interrupted.
Oh, no. And then the last one, and this came up right near the end of the conversation, was brought up about culture. That we don't, sometimes we put up boundaries based on our cultural upbringing. So, some cultures are more introverted, so to speak. And people don't feel like they can, in a big conversation, they don't want to just jump in, because that's not the way they weren't brought up in that world. They were brought up in a world where, you sit back and you have to wait for the right time. You wait for space or whatever. And so we put up these boundaries around ourselves because of our upbringing or our culture. So those are some of the things that came up in our conversation.
Yeah. And it harkens back to kind of what Sonia had said too, is that sometimes those cultural barriers can be almost magnified in a way when people just, I'm trying to say, like, if you get curious about it, it's much easier to understand why all of the things, right? The drivers behind those behaviors. But a lot of times it's just more convenient to go, well, they're just from a different culture than me, and that's why they are the way they are, and write it off, right? I mean,
or worse yet, we look down on them.
Say
And
more
that
on that.
happens a lot. I mean, that it unfortunately happens. People look down on people from other cultures. Oh, we're better than you. You know, and so, and that's again damaging, very damaging. You know,
Yeah.
and it's damaging to both individuals. I mean, you're looking down on somebody else, but you're also not learning from them, and you might learn that great thing that you never would have learned.
There's a lot of opportunity cost there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the thing that I walked away with most out of these 3 chapters is like the opportunity costs of remaining inward or distancing myself from others, or erecting these barriers between me and others, and it creating that distance.
Sure.
Not to say that I love peopling all the time, but it doesn't mean that I get to dissociate, right? Thank you so much, Neil. I love that. And then Jonathan, I really appreciated your comment here that you said you need to give feedback if you're really their friend. A friend wouldn't let you languish in mediocrity. And I just think that's huge, right? I mean, I think we talk a lot about, and we talked a little bit about in our group here that, it's very easy to say, well, outward is doing everything that the other person wants and inward is just doing what I want. When really, that's not exactly the case. And I think you hit the nail on the head here. If I really care about that person and they really matter to me as much as I matter, then I'm going to want the best for them. And so that maybe be giving them some tough love or some, tough feedback. So, I mean, I think that's great. Time is counting down and I want to make sure that you guys get the goodness. So, first thing I wanted to point you to first, let me say thank you. This was a great session. I love hanging out with you guys. Like ABC family, you guys are awesome. And I hope you come back 2 weeks from now. So what I wanted to share first and foremost, if you go in that same window where we have our chat over on the docs tab, you'll see a number of different things that we've put in there. So if you want to book a call with Arbinger, we have a link for you there. If you want to come hang out to our book launch party, we've got the Leadership and Self-Deception 4th edition launching on August 27th. We're going to have an hour long with guest speakers and trivia and all kinds of fun stuff. We would love to see you there. If you want to try and win a limited edition copy of the new 4th edition, there's a link for that in there. And then the last one is our audiovisual troubleshooting. So I hope that we had less challenges than last time around. But I'm so glad you guys are here. This is so much fun. I hope you're having at least half the fun that I am, because if that's the case, then it's been a good time. With that, I will see you guys. Hold on, let me pull up the schedule. I will see you guys again on September 5th. So for those in the US, happy Labor Day between now and then. And I hope to see you guys back. Bring a friend. Don't forget, you've already been registered for the future sessions. Don't stress about that. So we will see you back here. Also, in our follow-up, we'll send a survey. Thank you guys for those who responded last time. We really love your feedback. Since this is kind of still in its infancy, we really, really value everything that you guys have to offer. So please don't hesitate to let us know what you thought, ways that we can improve. And with that, I bid you all farewell. Thank you so, so much. It was great hanging out, and I will see you guys in a couple weeks. Bye.